Well, good morning again. Good morning, Facebook family and friends. This this is Sarah the morning. Good morning, Facebook family and friends. This is Sarah the morning, Dr. Mama with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. I am really glad to be back online. I didn't. I was waiting for my water to be delivered. Didn't take as long as I thought it may, but I have it now, so I'm glad about that. Anyway, we're gonna go live today. And as you know, we're talking about trauma. Every time I think that we're at a place where we may not be, I may change the conversation to something different. It doesn't happen that way. In a way, today is February 10th, 2024. I want to say first and foremost, thanks to everyone who listens to these videos. I appreciate those of you who come online and, during my live and make comments. Really, really appreciate it. As we can continue to work to be the best person that we can be and to live our lives the way, well, it won't be trauma free maybe, but in a way that we can manage our trauma and manage the triggers of the trauma that affects our lives. As we always say, trauma is an emotional response to any event. Doesn't have to be physical harm to us. It can be any event that leaves us feeling overwhelmed or isolated. It is so very normal, so very normal. My hope, as I thought about this done this week, my hope is that I know that some people, a lot of people know me, and I appreciate you. Please don't think that I don't. I really appreciate those of you who come on because you know me. But I really honestly hope that you can take these videos, and if it's something in here that we don't want to look through the glass at other people's lives, but look at it through the in the mirror of our own life. And if there's something in your life that this videos can help you, give it a chance. That's all I'm asking. Give it a chance. When we talk about trauma, we're talking about that type of trauma that does not subside naturally, as you know, that it is activated by triggers. And we always want to be, again, at ventral vagal, which is when trauma triggers occur. I said last time when trauma occur. But when trauma triggers occur, we want to be at the baseline in our emotional state where we see that as one separate item and we're not piling everything on together where and it leads us to a place where we're making the wrong decision or doing the wrong thing or not managing it the way we want to. We've talked about recognizing the power of your thoughts. We've talked about practicing gratitude when possible. Don't want to become toxic. We've talked about believing that the sky's the limit, cultivating our and sharing our passion and our purpose. We've talked about developing a mastery experience, and we've also talked about building beyond a growth mindset. Today, we're only going to talk about one. I think it's long enough to just talk about that one, because then I'll let you know what we're going to go into next. So today we're going to talk about think like a beginner. And I when I saw this, I always think about Kanye West's mom when she said a giant looks in the mirror and sees an ant. And it makes me, when I see things like that and I start to think about them, I start to research and study. Anyway, when we talk about thinking like a beginner doesn't have any expectations or preconceived notions. They don't. A beginner doesn't have those past experiences that limit their view of a situation. That's the good thing. Sometimes we don't want to be beginners because we feel that, especially when change happens. One example is when change happened in our job. It puts us all in a beginner state. Those of us who been experts on doing this job for 10 years. Then we got the new people, and it gives us that sense that we are more experienced, that we know better, that we are leaders, that we're the head of somebody else. But when change happens, it puts us all on the same playing field, and that's one of the reasons some people have a hard time with change. So as we talk about thinking like a beginner, this is a change it's not going to be easy for everybody. In the beginning mind, there are many possibilities. See, in an expert's mind, there are few. So when you have someone who is an expert at doing something a one way, and you come in trying to, look at it a different way, they don't want you to. And I'm sure that you ran into people who just didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to do that because they've always done it this way. And even if we have quote unquote always done it that way, that does not mean that there may not be a better way. So when we think like a beginner, we keep our mind open, and or we bring it back. We bring it back. Sometimes it's not open, but we try to actively bring it back. This term, when we talk about a beginner, it actually translates from the word shosham, and this is the word that comes from Zen Buddhism. I'm not. I'm a Christian, but it comes from Shin Buddhism, but it's still good. That's one of the reasons we don't block things out, because Even though I'm not Buddhist, that doesn't mean that this doesn't apply to me. It really does, and it can help me. So we don't want to cut ourselves off in places and things that we don't. We want to realize. For me, I know that my God is bigger than all the different religions that we have. So you know, so in Buddhism, in Zen Buddhism, it means to look at every situation you're placed in as if it's the first time you're seeing it, even though you may have been in a situation before, even though something may have happened like this, even if it's to you it's looking just like this, it's not that same situation. So what we want to do with a beginning mind is to look at every situation as it's the first time you're seeing it. Now you may have seen something like it, but you don't really know what this outcome is going to be. And sometimes we block ourselves and we limit ourselves because we ran into situations like maybe one situation, and it affects us in the place where we block ourselves and we're not open to other things coming into our life because of how that original situation may have hurt us or done something to us. We're talking about when we adopt a beginner's mindset. It's one way to become more comfortable with not knowing. It's okay. It's okay. We talk about it's okay to understand that trauma happens to us. It's okay that we cannot be okay, but we need to get comfortable and not knowing. Some of us and a lot of people want to be the one in the know, and to the point where sometimes you can ask a yes or no question, and they start to answer things that you didn't even ask because they don't want to appear that they don't know, or they don't want to say that they don't know, or perhaps they just want to be helpful. I don't know. But most of us go through life wanting to excel, and that's a good thing. But sometimes it can become an obsession, and the obsession with achievements can foster a closed mind thinking and make us steer away from being open to change. So we don't want to steer away from being open to change. We want to be available, and we want to be open to it because we never know where that change may lead us. And we're looking to have a full life. We're looking to have a complete life. We're looking to have a life that gives us everything that we need, the things that we want, the things that we need. Because I am a firm believer that that's the way God created us. That we are. He told us in the word that I read that we are the leaders, we're the head, we're not the tail, we're the lenders. And then we've said, well, okay, if I'm the lender, I don't have any money. Well, we don't speak that. What God said is true, even if we don't see it in our life. But anyway, we want to have this life that He said, I came that you could have life and have it more abundantly, have that more abundantly. So I want abundant life in my life. I want life in my life. I want joy and peace and those things that I want. I work toward those things. So when we began to think like a beginner, it's okay for us to not know. Okay. Thinking like a beginner also helps us to eliminate or diminish those fixed blocks mindset. You know, on last Saturday we talked about those fixed blocks mindsets where our mind is already saying, "Well, this is what I can do, and this is how far I can go." No, we want to diminish those. If possible, we want to eliminate those. But until we're able to eliminate those, we definitely want to diminish them. And we continue to practice the things we've been talking about until we are able to diminish them, and hopefully one day eliminate those block mindsets. As I said before, we don't say things like, this runs in my family. It doesn't matter how many people had it. It doesn't run in my family. The way that we speak really is really, really important what we saying to ourselves. We talked about that. We talk about no matter, it doesn't matter what other people are saying about us, but what we say to ourselves and what we believe is really going to affect us. Our thinking leads to what we believe and how we feel, and our feelings going to lead to what we do. So we want to be mindful of what we do. It can help us to be more compassionate with our purpose. When we begin to think like a beginner, our failures changes when we have these failures and things don't go the way that we hope. It changes from being a reason to stop to just an important source of feedback. When we can think like a beginner, we don't think everything is a roadblock. This didn't work, so I gotta stop. No, not necessarily. This didn't work, so now I know that that road won't lead me to where I want to go. It's an important source of feedback, so I don't keep going down that same road. But that doesn't mean that I stop. I look for other ways and other avenues because there are so many, and we free our mind from these preconceptions. We definitely want to free ourselves from all these conceptions that we already have in our mind, and we want to unburden the pressure to prove our abilities. We It's pressure when we gotta be the experts in everything. It's so much pressure for me. It was so much pressure trying to live up to what other people wanted, and the problem was no one told me what they wanted. As I grew up, and I talk about as I grew up, and then as I went into the workforce, it was so much pressure to me trying to prove that I could do things. I knew I could do a lot of stuff, but trying to prove to them that I could do it. But the problem with that was they didn't say what they wanted. Because sometimes, you may have noticed, sometimes when you go for your reviews or you're talking to people, people will say what they think you want to hear. And we really, it's one thing I think I'll use this for an example. I went one time and got my hair done. And as you can tell, I'm always changing my hair. So I went and got my hair done. And I went out. It was so much hair when they got through. They put this hair in my head. I couldn't see out one eye because they had the hair coming over one eye. I mean, there was a lot of hair, and I hated it when she got through with my hair. I'm like, oh no, I can't wear this. And the women in the shop, and it felt like, I don't want to lie and say it was every woman, but it seemed to me, and it could have been every woman in that shop telling me how good that looked. People will say things to you. That's why now when I get ready to do something to my hair, I look in the mirror, and if I like it, then it's okay. If I don't have to have a compliment. I don't have to prove that I'm able to anybody. I do what I'm able to do because these are the talents and the gifts that God has given me. I don't have to show it to anybody. We don't have to show it to anybody. I spent like, and you know, we talked about that too as being a trauma response. It's called FAWN, FAWN. How we, when we get to that place where we are trying to prove who we are, we trying to show people, and we can do that so much until we put ourselves so far on the back burner until we become insignificant even to ourselves. So it unburdens the pressure to prove our ability, which in turn means that we no longer struggle with the fear of failure. The only person, and I think I said this wrong too in the other video, but the only people that who do not make mistakes are those who are not doing anything. We're going to make mistakes. Everything is not going to turn out the way we want it to turn out. But that does not mean that we stop. It does not mean that we hold it against us, and we don't have to struggle with the fear of things not turning out the way we want. So when we talk about thinking like a beginner, but how? I believe that if we come up with a suggestion, that we should also have an idea, and not to just say, well, we can do this, but then we should do this, but then not have any suggestions on what we could do. I remember like at work, we know I when during my I'm sorry for something, but I started a business called um, Matters in the Heart, and we were raising money to open savings accounts for kids. The people would take our classes, which were actually the smart money modules, and we would, after they take our classes, we would raise the money to open savings account for our kids. And so we were talking about how we could raise money. And one of the suggestions were uh, we could have card games. I said, where? You in my mind, you don't just say we can have card games. You don't have a place to have card games. You can't say to me in my mind. You should not say we can sell dinners if you know you don't plan to cook. I mean, what dinners are you talking? At least have some. Think about something before you go out and say it's an idea. So ignore if the one thing we can do, and so that's why I try to tell you how and come up with some reasons, some ways to do the things we're talking about. So how do we think like a beginner? One thing we could do, we want to try and ignore the stories that our past experiences have told us. We want to try and ignore the stories that our past experiences will tell us. Okay. My past experience was that my father was a rapist. That's the truth. But not all fathers are rapists. So when I get one, and suppose I get a stepfather, and that past experience tell me fathers are rapists. Now I can't have a relationship with my stepfather because I know that my past experience is telling me stuff. The mind will tell us unnecessary stories in an attempt to give us a reason to why things happen. If these stories don't help us to get to where we're going, we want to try and ignore them. They lead us in because they will lead us to jump to conclusions that may not even be true. If we let these past experiences in our life, that's why when I talk to girlfriends and people, and they talk about guys and how the guys and some of women, the young women, don't want relationships anymore because they've had a relationship with some guys, a couple of guys maybe who and they were hurt. It could be anything. They were hurt. And so they jumped to these conclusions that our men are bad. They're afraid to even have relationships anymore. So we want to definitely ignore those experiences that tell us stories that may not even be true in this situation. One another example, a good friend does not call on your birthday. Question your assumptions. My good friend don't call. I was there for their birthday. I even threw them a party, and I was there, and I brought gifts, and they don't even call on my birthday. So we're assuming that they didn't want to come. We're assuming the words when it may not be the word. So what we do, we want to start questioning our assumptions. Ask yourself, why did I even jump to that conclusion? Why is that the answer? Why is that my way of looking at things? Oftentimes, when I talk to people, oftentimes when we talk to some, it's the conclusion that we jump to is not the most positive one. And why not jump to a positive conclusion? Why could it be that I know this is a good friend. First of all, this is a good friend, and if this is a good friend, they didn't just become a good friend because of one occasion. I hope, and a good friend in my mind means that maybe we know them well enough to say, she something happened that she couldn't come today. Whatever that something is, allow them to have that something. Like I said, we want to be like a beginner, like a little kid. That little kid maybe get upset and cry this minute and start laughing and playing the next minute. I have a granddaughter, great granddaughter, who comes over and she'll be crying, and I can say something to her, and she just go from crying to laughing with tears still in her eye. That's what we want. We want to be like a beginner. We want to free ourselves from all those things that's got us in a place where we can't be free. The second thing we can do, we can steer clear from autopilot. When you know something, it's easy to go into autopilot. So instead of automatically going through the motion, slow down, take your time, rediscover the aspect of the task. Be aware of what you're doing, what you're experiencing. So don't just go off into this is the way it is and let your mind and your body react to a certain way. Don't go into autopilot because I've decided that I'm gonna block everybody off. If they say anything I don't like, I'm just gonna block them off. If my favorite sister and I would say we're gonna do them one better. We don't want to just do everybody one better. We want to give people the opportunity to tell us, what happened. We want people to have the opportunity to be a friend to us. Yeah. So we want to be aware. We want to be aware of what we're doing. We want to be aware of the experiences that we have. So that's one of the biggest things we talked about at the very beginning. We want to pay attention. Slow down. Take your time. Rediscover. We want to act with intentions and live in the present moment throughout the entire experience. When we bring ourselves into the present moment, we will find that a lot of things that we think are big and bad are not that big and bad. Even if something is happening in our lives that's not good, something is going on. I may have told you about the day I had to go and speak at this other church when they were telling me that my son, they was giving him the death penalty. So I guess you can understand that if you got a kid and these people calling you, these people who have in my mind, the power and the authority can't give them death penalty, and they telling you that they're gonna kill your son. He's not dead. They're telling you that they're gonna kill your child. That moment right there is one of the worst experiences I could have ever had. But we have to bring ourselves. He's not dead yet. What can I do? Or I can go and just start crying and lose everything, and not and instead of seeing the possibilities of other things I can do because my mind is so clouded with what with the negative aspect of things. We want to make sure that when we want to act with intentions and live in the present throughout the entire experience. So every day I said to myself, he's not dead. They said it. He's not dead. He's not dead today. I can go get a lawyer. He's not dead today. Let me do this. I can do this. Things that I felt that I could do, it put me in a place where I had hope because there were things I could do. We act with intentions and live in the present moment throughout the entire experience. If you see yourself going through the motions and acting a certain way, try taking a different approach the next time around. So when this happens, we have to go and find some different approaches, and they are available. Sometimes we have to go to counseling. Sometimes we can talk to a friend, but there are different approaches. Don't feel that any one thing is the only way. It's not. It's not. This world is so huge. I was sitting in my house before I moved, I'm always talking to God, and I'm like, God, I'm bored. I'm over here by myself. I have a lot of people who know me, but I didn't have people like coming by, and I felt like I almost needed them to come every day. I'm bored and I'm here by myself, and I'm tired of being by myself. Da, da. And it came to me, God created it's a whole world of people out there. If you're bored, if you're lonely, you need to ask yourself why. There's a whole world of people. So what I did, instead of opening myself up to the two people, three people that I was always talking to, I opened myself up to other people. And as I opened myself up to other people, I decided, okay, I can have girls' nights. Girls can come over. We start having girls' night. And now I have moved to a whole different to a different town in Chicago, not even in Chicago. And the girls that I was with now, I have those same girls come all the way out here to hang out with me. So I'm not bored. I have company coming, so I have things to look forward to. And then I'm also in a different place where I can walk around. It's so many, we have so many opportunities that when we begin to think like a beginner, we're not closing ourselves off and we can find other things that we can do. We want to remove another thing we can do is remove that word should from our vocabulary. What should happen is based on our preconceived notions and expectations. Saying something should happen a certain way ties you to that outcome. If we're thinking like a beginner, we don't know what should happen. We a beginner doesn't know what should happen. We may know what could happen, but we don't know what should happen. So when we say that something should be a certain way, we're tying ourselves to that outcome. And then when the things don't go, when we don't have that outcome, then we're beginning to feel a certain way. So we want to remove that word should from our vocabulary, especially when we have traumatized our trauma triggers in our lives, because they shouldn't do this or they should do this. No, we kind of remove that. Okay, from our come from instead we want to let go of the outcome, let go of the outcome, and let go of our belief about what should happen or how something should be done. Let the world surprise you with new potential outcomes. Keep an open mind. If we stop doing this, we hear it all the time. I know I do. They especially Christians, they should do this. They supposed to do that. Who told you that? You decided what we should do. You decided that. When the Bible talk, he talking about all of us should do it. We all are supposed to be saved. He gives us all an opportunity. He doesn't make any of us. He said, "I stand at the door and knock. You open up, he'll come in." But we got in our mind all of these things. I guess from television and stuff. This is the way marriage should be. This is the way my friendship should be because we look. This is the way I should look. This is how I should eat. And when we see people that's not doing it the way we do it, it brings about some division. But anyway, we want to think like a beginner. Remove that word if we can, should from our vocabulary, and allow ourselves to be surprised with all these new potentials and outcomes that can happen for us. We don't too much like to talk about our ego, but we want to put it on the back burner. So when we're not, I'm not saying that to totally get rid of your ego, but make it of lesser importance than what you're trying to accomplish. So a lot of when people go and make comments like, "Oh, this gonna help that'll help somebody." I used to be in church, and when I used to be in church, and the preacher was preaching, and I thought that, "Ooh, so and so should hear this for them. This for them." No, it wasn't for them. If it was for them, if we believe in God, we believe He's big enough to. If it was for them, they would have been there to hear it, or He would got a way of telling them. So Put it on. Let what you're trying to accomplish in life be more important than your ego and and how you feel about it. Because you know how it is when you if you're an expert at something, you probably want to be recognized for it. It's good for your ego, boost your ego, make you feel good about yourself. And but when we get to that place where our ego is controlling things, the result becomes you want to be right at all costs because your ego, if you got this big ego and things are, and you find that something is showing you up that you're not right, you want to be right at all costs. And sometimes all costs is not the best way to go. A lot of times it's not the best way to go. Well, we put something into all costs. It just got to be this way at all costs. No, it's not good. When we began to think and become a beginner, know that one thing: a beginner is almost never right. A beginner is almost never right. They have no idea how it's going to be. I mean, what's going to happen? Because how can they? They're a beginner, and as a result, they can enjoy the new learning experience. I know. I know that a lot of things I had to delete from my life. A lot of those uh, uh, bridges and trigger, not bridges, but those gaps and those walls that I had run into. A lot of things that I had it wrong. I had a lot of things wrong in life. And as I began to learn that I didn't know, I began to learn. You don't learn anything when you think you already know it. So when I got to the point, I used to tell my girlfriend at work, and she even bought me a cup that says, I know nothing. When I decided that I didn't want to, I'm not going to close myself off to thinking I know, but I'm going to be open to I can do it. Like I did when I told you last week when I went to that store for that job. I knew I didn't know, but I knew I could do it. I can learn it. You show me I can do it. That's why I said why I said one time before. If your heart is on some position and you want to post for something for a job, don't let your education, don't let what you know stop you. Don't let it go and post for it. Go post for it. Let go of the need to be right in everything. Approach every situation as an opportunity to learn something new and to improve yourself. Let go of that need to be right. We have people right now in so much bondage and stuff because they need to feel like they're right. They need to, if you, I need to feel like I don't want people to know. It's okay. I think one of the things that made me do a good job at work, and I say that based on the reviews, and I say that based on customer feedback. So I say I did a good job based on that. So I think one of the things that made me good at what I did, because when the client called me and asked me for something, if I didn't know what they meant, I asked them. But I have seen so many people come to me and ask me, what do you think they want? And I'm saying to myself, why didn't you ask them? So you know what that does? When they call you, if someone calls you and with a need, and you don't know what they want, and you're going to ask somebody else, how do you know they know what they want? But as you wasting all this time, that client is waiting. So instead of keeping them waiting while I go and ask everybody else what that person on the phone right then can tell me, I can get it done faster. So a lot they knew that if they called me, I was going to find out what they needed and I was going to get it done. And I didn't need to prove that I was right. I didn't have a need inside of me that I had to look good to myself, whoever I was trying to look good to. Another thing that this week, as we think like a beginner, try and think like a beginner. Try to open yourself up. Try to open our minds up till that we don't have to have it right. That we can make mistakes. My challenge, and I ask you, you can join me for the rest of this month, for the remainder of February, as to approach as many situations as possible by first identifying your expectations. What are you expecting to come out of this? And then when you think about what do you expect to happen? Some people expect if they take you out to dinner, you're gonna take them out to dinner. If I buy you a cup, you're gonna buy me a cup. What are your expectations? And then once you identify those expectations, question them. Question your expectations. Why do we even have them? Will having these expectations really improve the experience of the relationship? What would it feel like to go through this experience without any expectation? What would it be like? Think about how open and how free it would be to meet somebody. You take them out to lunch, you buy them lunch, and you have no expectations from them. You're enjoying the time that you're there. Your mind is not wondering on oh, if they're gonna do this or what they're gonna do. You're just free. Think about it. Even when we do things such as like give away clothes or give away something. If you give it away, sometimes people give it away, but they don't actually give it away. They just use those words because they say they give it in a way. They got the mindset on who's gonna get it, what they're gonna do with it, and they come back. Sometimes they would come back looking for it after they give it to you. That's not good, especially not for me. Because I'm always trying to find. I'm always looking and open enough to. My daughter can tell you I give away the furniture at my house, and I be sitting here with no furniture. So if it's in my heart to do, so it's not good to put ourselves in a place where we have expectations. These set up these expectations from, especially in relationships, because that's a different person. I wouldn't want everybody in the world to be like me. That's what makes us so wonderful. That's what makes us so unique and so awesome. And to be able to have these relationships. When I look at my friends and the people that I know, I can look at this name and say, I remember this person does that person, and they are so different, but they're each so awesome. So let's try and think like a beginner. Just a recap of the things that we talked about when we're looking for ways to manage those trauma triggers. Believe that the sky's the limit. It's only impossible when we believe it's impossible. Cultivate and share your passion and purpose. Look for that purpose and allow it to take your passion to places that are much bigger than you are. Develop that mastery experience. Don't be afraid of losing and failing. Take on that new challenge. Succeed. You succeed in it. Think that you will. Know that you will. When you go take on that challenge, don't be afraid to do it. Build beyond a growth mindset. Let your talents and what you already know be the beginning. Build beyond that. You can not only can you build on what you already have, but you can go so much further. You can do some things that you never even done before. But you won't be able to do them if you're so afraid that people gonna look at you and that you're gonna be embarrassed. You won't be able to do it. If I had written that play, I knew in my mind I didn't think I could write a play, but it was in my heart, so I was going to write the play. Now that may make no sense. But if I had thought, let it been in my mind, you're going to write this play, and suppose it doesn't come out right, or suppose the people in the play that don't show up and do things. We had when we wrote the play, we did it twice. We did the play twice. So we did it one time at the church when we were on the north side, then we moved to the west side and we made it bigger and did it again. The second time we did it, the guy who was going to play Jesus, who was the leading role in the play, got sick and was in the hospital. But we had somebody that was able to step in and do it. So we don't let just because this happened, we don't go into that oh my God mentality. We look for other avenues. When we open ourselves up, there are so many other avenues. And then we want to think like a beginner. Those are the things and those are the pointers that I had for us as we deal with trauma triggers. How do we manage them? How do we get them to a place? So I really hope that as you listen to these videos and as you've taken part in these videos, that you really took a look at yourself. I hope that you really took the time out to see if I'm dealing with trauma triggers, if something has happened. It doesn't matter to say, something happened in Rose's life. Rose is not you. You need to look at what has happened in my life. What has happened in my life? Am I where I want to be? Am I dealing with trauma triggers? Am I seeing myself being, having traumatic responses to, I mean, not traumatic, but having these responses to things that are not aligned with the actual situation that's happening today? If my hysteria is not aligning with the current situation, could it be historical? Could I be dealing with something historical? Could it be that something happened in my life before that got me that I'm here that's causing me to react this way and to be this way? The videos are on YouTube. They're called Saturday Mornings with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. They are on Facebook for 30 days. Go back and look at them if you need to. Go back and read them and listen to them. Look for your own self to see, can you be where you want to be? That's my goal. My goal is to be where I want to be. My goal and my passion is to do it and to help others do it today too. I was thinking, as I finished those, I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know even if I was going anywhere else. But then I know where we'll be going next week. Next week, we're going to talk about trauma and boundaries. When we're setting boundaries, it's important to have them, very important to have them. But when we try to set boundaries and we're not recognizing our trauma triggers, we're not recognizing that we are dealing with triggers, and we're pushing those boundaries. When we start pushing and crossing, when we try to pushing those boundaries and crossing those boundaries can cause emotional damage to us. Now, my boundary. Think about some of the things that we talked about, some of the things in my life, the things that happened to me. And then I go to set a boundary in my life, but I got these trauma triggers. And that can really affect the boundary because my boundaries are really they're intertwined with the trauma in my life. So I'm trying to set a boundary, trying to get to a place, but I haven't actually dealt with the trauma. So now my boundaries are not even they're not even realistic because I got so much other stuff going on that I need to work on. So boundary pushing and crossing can cause emotional damage. And trauma, as we know, trauma complicates the task of even setting and enforcing our boundaries. It impacts the way we understand and relate to our own boundaries. We have our own boundaries. If we don't have any boundaries for ourselves, we won't. How are we going to set a boundary for anybody else? As me dealing with the trigger of, I mean, the trauma response of fire, I'm doing everything everybody else wanted. I had no boundaries for myself. So how, if I don't have boundaries and I can't understand and relate to my own boundaries, how can I set boundaries for anybody else to follow? So next week we're going to talk about trauma and boundaries after trauma and boundaries. It's important to understand these so that we don't try and set boundaries and try and enforce it. And then sometimes we find out that we're having a hard time with them. We're facing difficulties when we try and set these boundaries, when we try to push and these boundaries, and when we try to make sure that they become a part of our lives. We're having a lot of problems with them, and the emotional trauma and remote emotional damage that we're experiencing because we have set boundaries, but we haven't dealt with the trauma. Today's affirmations: my life is divinely guided. I am not defined by the trauma that I experienced. We don't need permission to exist. We have a right to acknowledge our feelings without justifying them. We accept ourselves completely. Today, we choose ourselves. We are only responsible for the me in our relationships, and we are safe places for ourselves. I appreciate every one of you for joining. I appreciate you for listening. I really appreciate for our comments. I haven't seen them because I did have the PowerPoint up, so I haven't seen them. But I just want to say thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope that you all have a great day, and I will definitely be. I see that Sister Antoinette say, examine ourselves daily. Sister Antoinette, thank you. Examine ourselves. We want to continue to look at our lives. We want to continue to see if there's something there that's preventing us from being where we want to be. Well, especially for those, not especially, but for those of us that believe in God, make sure that you sing. Is this what God said? If the word, this is a real guide in life. The only thing about it is about that. It's a guide in life. You know what God said, but we don't fool ourselves. We're not feeling that. We want to go back and look. We want to go back and look at it and see what it is that we need to do. But don't close yourself off. Let's not close ourselves off. We're going to continue to talk about trauma as long as God says to talk about trauma. Next week, we will talk about how do we set our boundaries because we do need boundaries in our life. If we don't, our life is just everywhere. But we want some boundaries in our life. But we want some good boundaries. We want some boundaries that are set the right way. We want some boundaries that we can even understand for ourselves. First, we got to set some boundaries for ourselves. If we can't manage our own boundaries that we have for ourselves, we say that we're not going to do something, we find ourselves doing it. We say we're going to do something, and we find that we're not accomplishing what we want to accomplish. We want to look at those things. So anyway, I really appreciate each one of you coming on. Hi, Danetta. Thank you, everybody. You all have a great week, and I will see you back here as on Saturday at 8 a.m. Have a blessed week. Goodbye.